All right, so you know how we've all thought about like how can something in our minds, make our bodies move?
Right.
It's like the mind-body problem. It's a classic, right?
Yeah, definitely a head scratcher.
And today's deep dive, we're looking at this paper by Ralph Abraham and Sisir, and they think they have a solution. And it uses like physics and computer science.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. They pull from all over the place,
So,
like ancient philosophy to like the latest in quantum mechanics.
and they say that like our minds and bodies could actually be from a digital reality. I'm intrigued, but
Yeah,
I'm a little lost.
understandable. It's a lot to take in. To get it, we need to go back and see how this whole mind-body thing came about.
Hmm.
You know, goes back to Plato at least.
Okay, so he had some ideas about this.
He did. He had this vision of the universe with different levels, like the good at the top, the ultimate source, then the intellect. That's where you find perfect unchanging forms, and then the world soul that has individual human souls, and then lastly the terrestrial sphere, which is like our physical world.
Okay, so it's like a hierarchy, a cosmic one.
Yeah, like a ladder reaching up.
But where's the problem then?
Well, the problem is, how do these levels talk to each other? It's like trying to explain how two totally different things can affect each other.
Okay, I see.
He even had trouble with something like the third man argument, which is uh, if you need something to explain how two things interact, what explains how that thing interacts with them?
It's like a middleman in a deal.
Right,
But then that middleman needs his own middleman.
exactly. And it goes on forever.
So this is an old problem.
Oh, yeah. And we find it in other traditions, too, like Kashmiri Shaivism. They also describe levels of consciousness, but how they communicate is still a mystery.
Okay, so we're seeing a pattern here.
That's the one.
Then the paper talks about Descartes.
Yeah.
Now, he had some pretty strong thoughts about this mind-body thing, right?
He was all about dualism. Mind and body, totally separate substances. He thought they interacted through the pineal gland in the brain.
But if they're so different, how can they even touch, let alone like affect each other? Did he have an answer for that?
Not really, and that was the big problem with his idea. It didn't explain how they interacted.
Okay, so then we get to atomism.
Right.
And this is where the paper goes on a wild ride through history. It starts way back with Parmenides in ancient Greece.
Parmenides, yeah.
Mhm.
He believed that all the change we see is an illusion, and behind it is a static, unchanging reality, what he called being.
So he thought the world was like like it seems real, but it's just images being projected.
Pretty good analogy.
Yeah.
But then you have his student Democritus, who comes along and completely changes things. He's considered the father of atomism because he thought the world was made of these tiny, indivisible particles, atoms always moving around in a void.
Okay, so instead of one unchanging thing, we've got a universe built from tiny building blocks.
Exactly.
And this is where it gets really interesting. He applied this to the soul too, right?
He did. He believed the soul itself was made of these special soul atoms, tiny, smooth spheres that could even pass through solid objects.
Wow, soul atoms going through walls. That's a pretty crazy image. But wait, the paper then jumps ahead like centuries to a Buddhist scholar in India, Dharmakirti?
Yes, in the 7th century, Dharmakirti added his own take on it. He proposed that atoms aren't eternal, but they kind of flash in and out of existence as points of energy, which is pretty close to some ideas in modern physics.
Like the quantum vacuum. Now we're getting into some serious physics here.
Yeah, think of the quantum vacuum like this sea of energy bubbling away. Even in empty space, particles are popping in and out of existence.
So nothingness is actually really active. That's a tough one to wrap your head around.
It is.
And speaking of things that are hard to understand, the paper mentions this digital philosophy.
That's where we start to connect this with computers. Edward Fredkin, a computer scientist, he said that nature is built on information like a giant computer program. Everything is finite and in steps.
So like the universe is running a simulation.
Yeah, kind of. And this is where it links back to the mind-body problem. Fredkin thought the soul is information built from how matter is arranged.
Hold on, so our souls are like software. That's a big jump from ancient Greece.
It is, and this is where the RRA model comes in.
Okay.
The author's way of connecting this digital world to our reality.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We've gone from ancient Greece to quantum mechanics and digital souls.
It's quite a journey.
It is. So next we'll unpack this RRA model and see if it can really solve this mind-body problem.
Oh, we will.
All right, so we've got some philosophy, some physics, even some computer science thrown in there. Now we got to tackle this RRA model.
Right, record Roy and Abraham.
Yeah, that's a mouthful, but it's supposed to explain how our reality comes from a digital world. How does that even work?
Well, it's a pretty big idea, but it's actually quite simple.
Hmm.
Imagine this huge network of points. They call them nodes, and they're constantly sending information back and forth.
So like the internet, but cosmic.
Exactly. And this
Yeah.
information, it comes in little packets called quanta.
Okay, so instead of cat videos and memes, we've got quanta flying around.
Right. And this whole network, they call it QX, and it works in steps like a cosmic clock, tick, tick, tick.
Hmm.
But here's the cool part. Their model shows how this tiny level, this quantum foam, can turn into the space-time we experience.
Hold on, how do you get from a bunch of information to like solid space-time?
That's the magic of the RRA model. They have these mathematical rules that show how these quanti interact in those tiny time steps.
Yeah.
And that creates space and time as we know it. It's like those paintings made of dots.
Pointillism.
Yeah. Up close, it's just dots, but step back and you see the whole picture.
Okay, I think I'm getting it, but then there's this idea of two types of time.
Right.
Microscopic and macroscopic. That's where I got really lost.
Yeah, it's a big one. But it's important for the mind-body problem.
Yeah.
So microscopic time, they call it T. That's the time in the digital world of QX. It's like the rhythm of the information going back and forth.
Okay.
And then there's macroscopic time, T. That's what we experience, seconds, minutes, hours.
So two different clocks, one for the digital world, one for us.
Oh.
But how are they connected?
Well, the RRA model says that macroscopic time T is like squeezed out of the microscopic world T in these little bursts. Think of squeezing toothpaste.
Okay.
The toothpaste coming out is macroscopic time, and each squeeze is a step of microscopic time.
Okay, I can see that. But why are there two times? Does it let the mind affect the body somehow?
You're on the right track. Remember, the problem is explaining how the mind can interact with the body when they seem so different.
Right.
Well, the RRA model says there are actually two WO digital networks, one for the body, QX1, and one for the mind, QX2.
Whoa, two separate networks, like parallel universes or something?
It's an interesting thought. Each network has its own nodes, its own clock ticking away, and the RRA model works for both. So QX1, the body's network, it becomes the physical world, space-time as we know it. And QX2, the mind's network, becomes what we could call the mental world, where thoughts and experiences happen.
So it's like two sides of the same coin, but still separate, right? So how does that solve the interaction problem?
Yes. Here's the brilliant part. Even though they become different realms, QX1 and QX2 are still connected at that tiny level. They can share information, those quantos we talked about, through this hidden channel.
So they're talking behind the scenes.
Exactly. The interaction isn't happening in the physical world or the mental world, but deeper down through this connection, it's like they're communicating through a secret back channel.
Like our minds and bodies are programs running on the same computer, and they can talk to each other through the operating system.
Perfect analogy. And if we think about what this means, it connects back to some of those earlier ideas.
Like Parmenides and his unchanging reality.
You got it.
Yeah.
This digital world with its two networks, that's the unchanging reality in the RRA model. Our physical world and our mental world, they come from this deeper digital being.
It's like we're looking at the same diamond from different angles. They look different, but they're really the same thing. But if everything comes from this digital source, what about free will? Are we just puppets in a program?
Now that is a deep question. Does the RRA model allow for real choice, or are we just robots following instructions? We'll dive into that when we come back for the last part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've gone from Plato's universe ladder to a reality made from quantum foam. And this RRA model, with its two networks for the mind and body, kind of solves the mind-body problem, but it also brings up some big questions, like if everything comes from this digital program, do we even have free will?
It's a question that's been around forever, and the RRA model just makes it even more complicated. If our thoughts or feelings, even our actions, are all just part of a system running at a tiny level, it makes you wonder if we really have control.
Yeah, it's a little scary. The idea that we might just be robots running a program. Does the RRA model give us a way out of this?
Well, remember, the model is mainly focused on explaining how the mind and body interact. It doesn't say there's no free will, but it does suggest that the mind's influence might be working at a level we're not even aware of.
So like we think we're making choices, but the decisions are actually happening somewhere else.
It's possible. It's like watching a magician. We see the amazing trick, but the real work is happening behind the scenes where we can't see it.
So maybe our feeling of free will is like the feeling we get when we see that magic trick. We experience it, but we don't really understand how it works. But if the mind is like a digital network, does the RRA model tell us anything about consciousness? Can we find out where in the network our sense of self comes from?
That's the big question, isn't it? Define consciousness in a physical system. The RRA model doesn't give us an exact answer, but it suggests that consciousness might come from the complex way information interacts in that QX2 network, the one for the mind.
So it's not like there's one consciousness node, but more like the whole network working together creates our experience.
That's a really interesting idea. It fits with the idea that consciousness isn't a thing, but a process, a flow of information and feelings and self-awareness.
And if we take this all the way, if both our minds and bodies come from this digital world, what does that mean for reality itself?
It makes you wonder what's really real and what's just an illusion. Is this digital world the true reality and everything we see and feel just a projection? Or are both realms real in their own ways?
It's a big shift in how we see things. Instead of asking how the mind and body connect, maybe we need to ask if they're just different forms of the same thing, information. This deep dive has definitely left me with more questions than answers, but it's also opened up a whole new way of thinking about the world.
That's what's great about exploring these big questions.
Yeah.
We might not get definite answers, but the journey changes how we understand things and makes us question what we think we know about reality consciousness and our place in it all.
Absolutely. So, to everyone listening, if this deep dive has got you thinking, keep going. Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and see where it takes you. You never know what you might discover.
The universe is full of mysteries, and maybe the biggest one is right inside our own minds. The RRA model gives us one possible way to understand this, but it's just one step on a much longer path.
Well said. So, until next time, keep diving deep.